In 1985, a tiny 15-seat aircraft took off from Waterford to London Gatwick, unknowingly sparking a revolution in Europe's skies. Few could have imagined that this daring flight would pave the way for Ryanair, a once-dismissed airline, to become the world's low-cost giant. For nearly 4 decades, Ryanair has not only changed how Europeans travel, turning flights once seen as a luxury into an everyday routine, but also forced traditional carriers to cut fares and adapt. While its no-frills service has faced endless criticism, Ryanair has remained true to its low-cost philosophy, delivering hundreds of millions of affordable flights every year. The journey from a small challenger to a global icon stands as one of modern aviation's most remarkable success stories. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below to support us. In 1984, Irish entrepreneur Tony Ryan and his partners decided to create a small airline with a bold ambition to break the monopoly on routes between the UK and Ireland, which had long been tightly controlled by British Airways and Aer Lingus. In July 1985, the very first Ryanair commuter flight took off using a 15-seat Embraer EMB 110 Bandeirante, linking Waterford with London Gatwick. Return fares were set at just £99, less than half the price charged by traditional carriers. This shock fare immediately sent ripples through the market. For the first time, Europe's skies witnessed a genuine fare war, forcing the two established giants to slash prices in order to keep their passengers. The gamble quickly paid off. In its very first year, the single Waterford-London route carried around 82,000 passengers, an impressive figure for a brand-new airline. Encouraged by this success, Ryanair pushed further. In 1986, it launched the crucial and lucrative Dublin-London Luton route, directly challenging both Aer Lingus and British Airways. To meet soaring demand, the airline added 2 Hawker Siddeley H748s with 46 seats each, far surpassing the capacity of its tiny Embraer. By the late 1980s, Ryanair had built a more diverse fleet, including BA-C-111 jets and ATR-4 2-turboprops. Its network expanded to 15 routes across Ireland and the UK, operating about 14 aircraft and serving nearly 500,000 passengers annually. However, rapid growth and costly fleet expansion soon pushed Ryanair into financial turmoil. Losses mounted into tens of millions of dollars, leaving the young airline on the brink of bankruptcy only a few years after its promising start. Amid this crisis, founder Tony Ryan placed his trust in an ambitious young aide, Michael O'Leary. Tasked with the daunting mission of restructuring and saving the fledgling carrier, O'Leary's entry marked the beginning of a new era. It laid the foundation for Ryanair's spectacular transformation from a struggling upstart on the verge of collapse into the airline that would redefine European skies as the continent's ultimate low-cost symbol. The biggest turning point in Ryanair's history came in the early 1990s, when Michael O'Leary was entrusted with restructuring an airline teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. Blunt and pragmatic by nature, O'Leary chose not to patch up the old model but to reinvent Ryanair from the ground up. Sent by Tony Ryan to the US to learn from the master at Southwest Airlines, O'Leary quickly absorbed the philosophy behind the world's leading low-cost carrier: relentless focus on cost efficiency, high aircraft utilization, and the elimination of all unnecessary frills. Back in Ireland, he implemented the no-frills model almost to perfection. Ryanair scrapped business class, cut free in-flight meals, and stripped services down to the bare essentials. Cheap fares to get passengers from point A to point B, with every extra soft drinks, snacks. Checked baggage turned into ancillary revenue. At the same time, O'Leary standardized the fleet around a single aircraft type to reduce maintenance costs, simplify pilot training, and optimize operations. Inefficient ATR-4 2 turboprops were retired in favor of BAC-111 jets, which better suited the low-cost strategy. Results came quickly. Within a year, Ryanair recorded its first-ever profit in 1991, totaling £293,000, a modest sum, but proof that the low-cost model worked. That same year, the airline moved its London base from Luton to the newly expanded London Stansted, where lower airport fees gave it a long-term cost advantage. This strategic shift turned Stansted into Ryanair's primary hub for more than 3 decades, opening the door to millions of budget-conscious travelers bound for London. Armed with its lean cost structure and streamlined operations, Ryanair soon dominated routes between the UK and Ireland markets once controlled by Aer Lingus and British Airways. By 1993, Aer Lingus even attempted to buy Ryanair for £25 million, but the offer was rejected. Just a year later, Ryanair overtook both rivals to become the largest carrier on the Dublin-London route, then the busiest air corridor in Europe. The breakthrough came in 1994, when Michael O'Leary was officially appointed CEO and secured a 25% stake in Ryanair. His boldness and unconventional vision ushered in a new era, transforming Ryanair from a struggling upstart drowning in losses into the pioneer of European low-cost aviation. From a daring challenger to national carriers, Ryanair began to soar on the wings of its defining philosophy: low fares to go further, a principle that would shape its trajectory for decades to come. The European Union's adoption of the Open Skies policy in 1997 completely reshaped the regional aviation landscape. Previously, route rights were tightly controlled by bilateral agreements between countries. With the skies opened, airlines were free to launch routes across the entire EU. This presented a golden opportunity for Ryanair, already established as a low-cost carrier, to quickly expand beyond the Ireland-UK corridor. In 1997, Ryanair launched a series of new routes from Dublin and London Stansted to secondary airports such as Stockholm-Bromma, Oslo-Torp, Paris-Beauvais, and Brussels-Charleroi. Choosing regional airports became the airline's golden formula: lower infrastructure costs, less competition, and sometimes local government incentives to boost tourism. While traditional carriers focused on expensive primary airports, Ryanair created a parallel network serving passengers who cared most about low fares. To realize this ambition, in 1998, Ryanair placed its first direct order for 45 Boeing 737-800s worth around $2 billion. Moving away from leasing older aircraft, this marked a clear signal that the airline was no longer a small player but aimed to dominate Europe. The strategy also included pioneering online ticket sales in 2000, eliminating traditional travel agents, cutting costs, and giving customers more control. These decisive moves fueled explosive growth, from 3.7 million passengers in 1997 to 67 million in 2009, with an average fare of just around €35. By the 2010s, Ryanair had grown strong enough to compete head-to-head with traditional giants. By 2010, the airline operated 272 Boeing 737-800s across 44 bases and more than 1,300 routes throughout Europe. In terms of efficiency, Ryanair had become a profit machine. In 2007, it recorded a net profit of €239 million on €843 million in revenue. And in the pre-COVID-19 era, profit per employee was 4 times the industry average. Expansion continued at full pace. Ryanair ordered 210 Boeing 737 MAX 8-200s, the game-changer version, with 197 seats, increasing capacity by nearly 8% over the 737-800 while improving fuel efficiency. Beyond fleet growth, Ryanair diversified through subsidiaries: Ryanair Sun in Poland for the charter market, Ryanair UK to maintain a post-Brexit presence, and notably the acquisition of Austrian carrier Laudamotion, later rebranded Lauda Europe in Malta, providing deeper access to Germany and Central Europe. Thanks to its strategy of every small airport as a gateway, Ryanair gradually became Europe's largest airline by passenger numbers. By the late 2010s, it had overtaken Lufthansa and Air France-KLM, serving over 100 million passengers annually. From a fledgling airline with a single aircraft in 1985, Ryanair had transformed into a low-cost aviation giant, symbolizing Europe's full shift into an era of affordable, frequent, and widespread air travel. Behind Ryanair's rise stands Michael O'Leary, an unconventional and perpetually controversial CEO. He is famous for the philosophy, "There's no such thing as bad publicity. The more the press criticizes, the more Ryanair is mentioned and the more tickets are sold." Unlike the composed leadership style of traditional airlines, O'Leary chose to shock, turning Ryanair into a headline magnet. He once jokingly suggested encouraging pilots to cause a bit of turbulence so thirsty passengers would buy drinks. On another occasion, he even proposed charging for toilet use and promised to clean it himself if passengers paid £5. His audacity didn't stop there. O'Leary called passengers who forgot to print boarding passes stupid for facing a €60 fine and mocked rival CEOs as cowards. Environmental activists criticizing aviation emissions were labeled frauds. This aggressive stance made O'Leary one of the most hated, yet most talked about figures in aviation. The irony, the press couldn't ignore him, and Ryanair received free publicity from his shocking remarks. O'Leary's marketing strategy was equally provocative. Ryanair once launched a back-to-school ad featuring a scantily clad girl in uniform with the slogan, "Hot prices to welcome you back to school." The UK regulators condemned and demanded its removal, but the airline ignored them. In 2008, Ryanair boldly used photos of French President Nicolas Sarkozy and his wife Carla Bruni with a cheeky caption, resulting in a lawsuit and a €60,000 fine. Yet for O'Leary, that amount was nothing compared to traditional advertising costs. The outcome? Ryanair became a household name while keeping its marketing budget almost non-existent. While Ryanair's shock tactics brought massive brand recognition, they also earned the airline the reputation of being low-cost but lousy service. After years of continuous growth, Ryanair reported its first quarterly loss at the end of 2013. O'Leary had to admit that the airline had neglected the customer experience. From then on, he launched the Always Getting Better campaign to reshape the airline's image. Ryanair introduced allocated seating, allowed additional free cabin baggage, offered family-friendly perks, and removed many fees deemed unreasonable. These reforms quickly softened the previously rigid brand, enabling the airline to reach new customer segments without losing its low-cost edge. Yet Ryanair couldn't avoid crises. In 2017, pilot scheduling errors led to thousands of flight cancellations, affecting over 700,000 passengers. In contrast to his usual defiant persona, O'Leary publicly apologized and admitted, "This was a mess of our own making." But immediately afterward, he still challenged critics, asserting that angry passengers would be back soon because Ryanair fares were unbeatable. Indeed, most customers eventually returned, demonstrating the irresistible pull of low prices. O'Leary even quipped, "Our booking system is full of people who once swore they'd never fly Ryanair again." Thanks to his unique personality and provocative management style, he turned Ryanair into a rare phenomenon. Widely criticized yet carrying more passengers than any other European airline, Ryanair became proof that, in business, notoriety can sometimes be an advantage as long as the fares are too low to resist. Entering the 2020s, Ryanair faced an unprecedented challenge in its nearly four-decade history: the COVID-19 pandemic. As European governments imposed lockdowns and closed borders, air travel came to an almost complete halt. In the 2020 to 2021 fiscal year, Ryanair carried only 27.5 million passengers, a dramatic drop from 149 million the previous year. Revenue fell by 81%, and the airline reported a net loss for the first time after years of continuous profit. For a carrier long considered the cash machine of low-cost aviation, it was a severe shock. Yet, instead of hunkering down and waiting out the crisis, CEO Michael O'Leary turned adversity into opportunity. He used the near-zero demand period to negotiate cheap aircraft purchases, expand into routes abandoned by competitors, and renegotiate contracts with European airports for more favorable fees. This crisis-driven offensive positioned Ryanair to surge ahead as soon as skies reopened. As predicted, within just 2 years, Ryanair not only recovered, but surpassed pre-pandemic levels. In 2022, the airline returned to 149 million passengers, and in 2023, set a new record with 181.8 million, up 13% from the previous year, with an average seat load factor of 94%, the highest in its history. The fleet was also significantly upgraded with Boeing 737 MAX 8200 game-changer aircraft, increasing capacity while saving fuel. Today, Ryanair operates nearly 600 aircraft, including around 140 of the new MAX generation, serving 240 airports across 35 countries, and operating approximately 3,600 flights daily across Europe. With this foundation, Ryanair has set ambitious targets: 225 million passengers per year by 2026, and even 300 million annually by the early 2030s, a staggering leap from the mere 5,000 passengers in 1985. The airline plans to maintain its lowest fares everywhere strategy, expand into secondary airports and niche markets, and continue cost optimization to offer even lower fares. Beyond scale, Ryanair aims to be a pioneer in sustainability. The airline is testing biofuels, deploying more fuel-efficient aircraft, and targeting carbon neutrality by 2050. From a small carrier once on the brink of bankruptcy, Ryanair now not only aspires to dominate European air travel in volume, but also to demonstrate that low-cost fares and sustainable growth can go hand in hand. From a tiny 15-seat Embraer crossing the Irish Sea in 1985, Ryanair has risen to become an unmissable symbol of Europe's low-cost aviation era. Nearly 4 decades of its journey are full of paradoxes. An airline harshly criticized for its no-frills service, yet the gateway to the skies for hundreds of millions of passengers who never imagined they could fly. Ryanair forced traditional carriers to adapt, slash fares, and face tougher competition. From being dismissed as a daring underdog on the market's sidelines, Ryanair has become a giant, transporting hundreds of millions of passengers each year while pioneering a new understanding of low-cost aviation. With ambitions that show no signs of slowing, Ryanair's story is far from over.